Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. At only 32 years of age, Julian Nagelsmann is already an established manager, having made waves at Hoffenheim and now doing the same in Leipzig. His attacking style of play and versatility mean he's already one of the best managers around and could go on to achieve so much more. They sit only a few points behind Bayern and Dortmund in the Bundesliga, but what tactics does Nagelsmann use to achieve this? Well, let's take a look. And to help with this, we will be using stats at certain points, and you can get stats like these and more from the OneFootball app, which is today's video sponsor. It's a great app giving you news, transfers, stats, and so much more, and you can get it for free through the link in the description below. There is no one formation that you can associate with Nagelsmann's Leipzig, as he looks to adapt to his opponents on a match-by-match basis, as he sees fit. However, his most common formations are a variation of the 4-4-2 as well as a back 3 formation. Much like Pep, one of the managers he admires most, when he does shift his formation, the principles remain the same. These are vertical, possession-based football, high pressing, and an emphasis on attack. Let's look at the build-up play, starting with the 3-4-3/3-5-2 base. From deep, when on the ball, they look to play out from the back, with Galashi being comfortable finding the centre-backs. Leipzig can then be patient, and they're comfortable working the ball from one side to the other to draw the opposition, to then allow the far side wing-back to be higher up the pitch in a bit more space when the ball does eventually come around. At the same time, this patient play from deep will naturally invite the opposition onto them, forcing their line higher, and Leipzig's pacey forwards, particularly Werner, will be on the defender's shoulder, ready to run in behind onto a longer pass, a ploy which we'll come back to shortly. But in order to prevent themselves from being caught in the dreaded U, a situation where the team repeats this process without ever advancing up the pitch, Upamecano is vital to this. In the analysis of Tottenham vs Leipzig, we saw how Upamecano stepped into midfield when the keeper had the ball to create a 2 vs 1 against Ali, and if you want to see that full video, the link is in the top right now. However, Upamecano is capable of doing this from open play as well, stepping here alongside Lima to provide an extra passing option, whilst allowing Zabitzer to push higher up with the forwards, and dragging a marker away from the other centre-backs, who are then encouraged to play into the midfielders. This maneuver is particularly useful on the occasions when Leipzig use a single pivot, as this takes some of the responsibility off of him. But in most formations, Nagelsmann favours a double pivot, whether using a back 3 or a back 4. Leipzig like to stagger their lines all over the pitch, which allows them to have more men between opposition lines. In the case of the double pivots, this usually means one man dropping deep towards the ball, whilst the other pushes higher between the lines. This is backed up by one of the front men dropping deep, whilst the others threaten in behind. This forces the opposition to move into a new shape, creating a moment of time where Leipzig can pounce. One repeated trend of Leipzig is layoffs, where a player dropping deep plays a 1-2 with the initial passer, as noted in the analysis of Leipzig vs Bayern, which is up in the top right as well. So the deeper midfielder lays it back to the centre-back, who can now look to pick out the midfielders between the lines or one of the dropping forwards. As touched upon earlier, it is important to know that Leipzig are not afraid to go long, as verticality is a big part of their game. So whether using the front 2 or 3, the wide players are forwards and midfielders at the same time. They drop deep, and if they receive the ball unmarked, they have time to turn between the lines. But if followed, it creates a gap here. After laying the ball back, a ball over the top into the space can be played. Even without this movement, they can just as easily play long to the target man, Poulsen, who looks to knock it down between the lines. This is particularly useful when the opposition defenders haven't moved to compact this space, as they were being wary of the pace of Werner or Nkunku. A quick note, Nagelsmann does encourage his centre-backs to play in tight spaces from deep, and of course human error can occur, and they've conceded multiple chances and goals this season from sloppy individual mistakes. Moving higher up the pitch, overloads are the name of the game for Nagelsmann's men. They aim to have both vertical and horizontal overloads in a region. From the front 2, one man drops into the half space to provide a passing option, as well as support for the somewhat isolated wing-back. If they use a 4-4-2, it is instead the wingers who move into these regions. Often Nagelsmann is brave, pushing both of his pivots high to support this, and as a result, they have several men around the ball, allowing them to move it rapidly between them. Layoffs are still a big part of this, with the forwards dropping deep to facilitate a central pass, playing it back to then allow the pass in behind. At the same time, this can be used to free up the wingbacks to have space on the flanks. But naturally, the side overload drags the opposition to one side, and thereby facilitating the switch to the wingback who's arriving. Between the forwards, as well as the high pivots, they can then look to overload the box when the wingback does cross into the box, or they can receive a cutback. But what happens when they lose the ball? Well, from high up in these positions, the back line pushes high to help support the rest of the team, who also look to press high. The pivots stagger and look to win the ball high up the pitch before the opponent is in good possession, and often they are able to do this. But on the occasion that the first wave of pressing is bypassed, Leipzig is in trouble and have to depend on the coordination of the back three, slowing down the play before one moves to confront the ball carrier whilst the rest drop deep to cover. But when the opponent is building from deep, their pressing maneuver is slightly different. Depending on the opponent's strengths, Leipzig will either deliberately let them build through the center or deliberately force them wide on the outside. When opponents have strength and numbers in the midfield, for example versus Bayern, the front three can shift to a 2 and a 1, compacting the central space, forcing them wide. From here, the touchline is an extra defender, and the wingbacks push high to prevent progression. They can then look to lateral press, cutting off the inside options to either force an error or to force them backwards. But if Leipzig have the natural advantage in the center, the forwards will instead cut off the outside options. When the ball is played central to the pivots, it is the trigger for one of Leipzig's own pivots to then press him on the blind side to win the ball or force him backwards. Despite the impression that Leipzig constantly press high, depending on the phase of the game, they can look to sit deep as well. Their back three can quickly turn into a back five, or their 4-2-4 shifts back into a compact 4-4-2, with the pivots being key in protecting the defense. When they win the ball, they can again spring forwards on the counter-attack, using tactics similar to those discussed, either looking immediately long for the pace of Werner and co, or using layoffs to disorientate the defense before looking to play into the central space created. The statistics make for interesting reading. The stats mean that they sit third in the Bundesliga, the position they finished last season, but this season they are much closer to the league leaders. The progress is shown as last season they crashed out in the Europa League group stages, and this season they are into the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Under Ralf Rangnick, RB were a great side in their own right, but this season they have moved to the next level. They are on course for more points than last season, and are scoring more as well. Although they have conceded more per game, the XG suggests they have been somewhat unfortunate. Interestingly, their press game has gone down, because as discussed earlier, they now press in a more strategic manner, rather than constantly. At the same time, their increased patience in the build-up is shown by the higher opposition passes allowed per defensive action. A progressive club and a progressive manager have clashed, meaning that the future is bright for RB and Nagelsmann. But I'd like to know, where do you currently rank Nagelsmann amongst world managers? And do you think one day he could be considered the best manager in the world? Just before you go, as you know, football is currently suspended for a few weeks. Match analysis were a big part of the channel, and whilst I'll still make plenty of videos for you, this will affect the channel unfortunately. As a result, your help in supporting the channel will be greatly appreciated. There's some free ways which you can do this, including whitelisting the channel from ad blocker when watching, and I know a lot of people don't like ads, but the ad revenue would greatly help the channel. Even if you skip the ad after the 5 seconds, it would make a massive difference. Or you can download the OneFootball app for free through the link in the description. But of course, if you can't do either of these things, watching the video is plenty of support. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.